Coming at you live from Los Angeles. That's right. Moved out here after going through some tough times in both New York, Florida, and Michigan. Okay, the name of the show is called The Crowning of the Child in the Age of Corona. This is Discharge. Okay, what their record looked like in 1982. And here's their song. Question: and children? Should we kill children? Answer: yeah, and children. In agony, they cry and scream. It's an anti-war song. I'm not sure if you guys are anti-war. 1982. I had spiky hair. Still in high school. I was 16 years old. Started my own punk band. What's up, Cabbage Head? All right, well, there you go. That's Discharge. They were a huge band. I never got to see them. I was in a punk band in the 1980s. They were one of many, many, many punk bands. Check out my playlist, guys. Yes. I started making videos in my hotel room and in Michigan. In case you don't know, this is weaponized. Okay. And my wife and my drummer were coming through my Facebook app and they were basically electronically harassing me. I don't know why, because number one, I was married to my wife and my drummer, we were supposed to make music together. But anyways, I try to usually start my show by talking about, my childhood. And part of that childhood was growing up at 6 Mile and Gratiot. I'm a songwriter, and I had over about 30 songs, and I don't run a label. So when it came time to Detroit, to be in a band in Detroit, I was very shy. I started getting into acting around 1991. I lost interest. There was nobody showing any interest in my band. Garage rock and shoegaze were coming up along with rap rock. And I was playing music that was closer to Rancid and Green Day. They both have a guy with the last name of Armstrong in the band. So there must be some relation there at some point, right? But I was playing this music while I was listening to, Tom Waits and the Stiff Little Fingers. Like that's what I was into. And so let's check out one of my songs before we get started here. I was a child and I am a child of the cinema. And by the way, I am writing a novel and I want this novelization to turn into a television show. We talk about The Will. We're going to be talking about The Will. Where am I? Hello. Some light reading for you. Okay. This came out in around 1904 was the first one. And then the American version came out in 1960-ish, and they did two revised editions. This is from 1980. Okay. So we're going to be talking about the will and notions such as that. So in the grand scheme of things, I'm writing a novel, and in that novel, I actually have to create a cult. Okay, so my show is a lot of things. We talk about current events, which is the crowning of the child in the age of Corona, which is happening right now in our society. We talk a lot about Media Deep Blue, okay, and HAL and, right, how Media Deep Blue came out of HAL and HAL came out of IBM. IBM created Deep Blue, which was the first AI. Stanley Kubrick. In my novel, there's a Kubrickian style director. Okay. I walked into a room with Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman, and they were in New York to work with Stanley Kubrick. And I didn't even know it at the time. I wrote a song about Stanley Kubrick. Let's see here. Let's see if I can find it. I can never find anything, right? There's Underclass. I don't know why I can't find it, but I'm going to play the one about the Gadsden flag. It's called Tread on You. And here it is. I wrote it about the Gadsden flag. If it plays, please. You can see it's very similar to Discharge. That's what made my band, the Grievance Committee at the time, were now called Linoleum Blown Apart, so unique at the time. He was supposed to hit a cymbal there, but he didn't. It's like, I was like 21, 23. Okay, so it's a little loud. So you can clearly hear the Discharge. That was the first band that I played. You could hear that influence in this song. This song's about the Gadsden flag. That's in the news right now. Okay, it has a complete history to it. It's a yellow flag, actually, right, with a snake on it. Okay, and these flags, I actually have one of my properties called the Spangled Banner. And so these symbols and these flags get imbued with the power that we basically allow it to have, right? So when you say that these symbols are banned and these symbols mean a certain thing, when people like Titus Frost are going around saving us from pedos because they're pointing out a bunch of Cheetos dusted simps who live in their mother's basement, who look at hentai porn, and they use a symbol of a snowflake, which is my symbol for yay, right? I was like, okay. Right? So it's a symbol for yay, symbol for cocaine. But now all of a sudden, no, once you know something about a quote unquote symbol, then it's imbued with that power now. Now, anytime you see this, right? And that's why they created the CP cheese pizza, right? All these acronyms as it were. And then, you know, that it stands for this. It doesn't mean this, it means this now. And so this is part of indoctrination. Indoctrination Nation. This is part of that. Okay? When you start clicky, clicky, swipey, swipey, scrolly, scrolly, likey, likey, trademarked, then you're going to be receiving confirmation bias from Media Deep Blue. Okay? Stick with me, guys. Please. Don't go anywhere, please. See, so here's, I keep doing that. Yeah, look at all the stories. This is today. This is, I'm having a fling with Bang. Look, what am I going to emotionally invest? Look at this. Look at all these stories. Every single day, every day, I show it to you. This is what's known as Media Deep Blue. We are receiving these stories. And some of them sound sexy because, oh my God, did you hack a politician? Okay. What people don't understand is that there's something called the Federal Papers Act. And what these politicians have is ours. It belongs to us. Okay? It does not belong to them. They have to share it with us. It's the Federal Papers Act. So, right? So this is the crowning of the child. This is the childlike behavior. This is the childlike naivete that they try to push on us. Are you living orthogonally? Always check out orthogonality. Always on Wikipedia. Okay, we talk about orthogonality here. You have to look into these things. You have to participate in this show. I talk about so many things on the show. I talk about my novel. You guys actually helped me create characters in this novel. We are up to, there's a finite timeline in my novel. So you have to recognize that as well. In the punk rock milieu, the finite timeline is 1987 and 1996. I have all the music. Okay, that's what I have. Me. That's right. Me, myself, and Ison. My last name's Ison. My writing is also available on Kindle. I'll never ask you for money. I am on the dole. I paid in with payroll taxes, and now I'm taking that money back or utilizing that some of the money that I paid in taxes through eating off of food stamps. They call them food stamps, EBT, whatever, bridge card. Okay, whatever you want. So you don't want to look at that. Okay, take a look at my playlist, guys. Take a look at this. The top one, 2025-ish financial collapse. That's where they're talking about Michael Burry putting down $1.5 billion, the guy from The Big Short, that the stock market is going to crash. Now, he has to pay dividends on that. They show you that in the film that I just mentioned, The Big Short. Okay, this is on my playlist, guys. Here's my band. You got to go all the way to the bottom. Here's my band. And there's a picture of a Stanley Kubrick film, obviously Clockwork Orange. And the very first song that comes up is Ludovico Technique from Clockwork Orange. So when I was in Michigan in the 1980s, that's what this is all about, right? Here it is. Another starting with the drummer. I'm a drummer guy. All right, I'm not going to get into it too much. I can't make too much noise here. Okay. So I'm a Mickey Dolenz / drummer type of guy. Okay. I love my drummers. I used to anyways. But I could never, really be able to get out really good recordings of my music. So all my music is going into my novel. Okay. So this is on the level of Thomas Pynchon and James Joyce. Okay. Where it's not so much nonsensical wordplay. It's not so much, it's more like a Thomas Pynchon. You're going into this universe. And these parallel lives are going to be kind of overlapping. And you're not only going to be overlapping with the filmmaker and the guy who has the same birthday as Napoleon, but the filmmaker's films that influence the people in the Linoleum Blown Apart universe. Now, I think it was yesterday or the last show, I talked about a song I have called Collision Course, and the precious juice was hidden inside the vehicles. Well, I got the juice and I need the space is the line in the song that's going into, right? I want it to be a television series, but it has to start as a novel. We're writing this right here on the show, guys. Very exciting. A lot more than discovering somebody who's a pedo. I mean, this is just insane, right? We all want to protect children. And this is why people are getting emotionally invested in this, right? So we're not going to have any stuff like that in Linoleum Blown Apart. But I talk about it on my show because we are in the age of Horus, according to these theosophists. Okay? And these ages, I guess they go like 2,000 years, and it's in conjunct with the not only the karmic cycle that they talk about, the Kali Yuga. That's why the Rolling Stones use the tongue of Kali. Right? That's why the Rolling Stones use the tongue of Cali. Cali. I'm in Cali. Right? Going back to Cali. Right? So we're in that age, but we're also in the age of Aquarius. This is why everybody's carrying around water bottles. Don't mind if I do. Stay hydrated. Everybody says it all the time. Stay hydrated. I don't think they understand that sometimes water doesn't break down into your system to hydrate it. That's why they created Gatorade, because they actually use salts, and salt can adhere more to your body, right? So there's either salt or there's sugar. There's salt and there's sugar, right? That's really all you're going to be putting in your body: caffeine, salt, and sugar. That's all I put in my body, right? Mostly, for the most part. But anyways, I don't want to get too far afield. But we're talking today about living in this age, and so Aleister Crowley, in my opinion, he was like, he was a bit of tabloid fodder. Ernest Hemingway mentioned him in A Movable Feast. That was at the end of Hemingway's career, when he couldn't really write anymore. He was too much of an alcoholic, right? And it's just like me. I quit drinking in the '04 era, and I was able to really come back because I got this rejuvenation and the clarity in order to write my book. And I realized, like, well, if I drink like once a month or do a bong rip, that's cool. I'm not chasing it every night. And I really kind of almost never really was. It was almost like, because I didn't have a band, because I didn't have a book yet, it takes a long time. And like I talk about Anthony Bourdain, I believe Anthony Bourdain, like me, was victimized in 2017 by this operation. It was a self-harm operation coming from this. They attacked everybody's metonic cycle, because the metonic cycle is 17 hours of sleep, of wakedness. Then you get your seven hours of sleep. Everybody knows it. And then you got all these studies that are like, oh, you get 5 hours, you get 6 hours, you get 7 hours. Which one's good for you? Oh, 8 hours is too much. Okay, so this is this pedantic rubbish. Okay, and I really, some of that stuff is just, if you can't see these quote unquote studies and this quote unquote science, these scientific studies I'm talking about, I'm not talking about the scientific method. Okay, so if you can't see these as kind of almost rigged to the point where, are you really going to pay for a scientific study and have the results come back not in your favor? How many of us would really do that as a business decision, right? I mean, you got to cut your losses. I understand it. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. I'm sure it does happen. But for the most part, these numbers can be fudged. And we know this, okay? With these axiomatic numbers and these variables that you use, like X, like fuck around, and then you find out right here, right? With these axiomatic numbers, X or N, whatever, can equal both 1 and 2. Okay, that's a mathematical equation. You could look it up right here on YouTube. I'm YouTube exclusive. Yay. I got every right to be here. I got every right to tell my story. If my channel's suppressed, it's suppressed. I don't talk about the medical mafia. I don't care. If you want to put a womb inside of a man so he can have a baby like my Schwigger, Arnold Schwarzenegger, in a movie, go ahead. Okay. But ultimately, what's happening is that we are living in different ages and different cycles and different aeons. And these words can mean different things. Well, let me just show you. I was talking about Aleister Crowley. I had The Great Beast. It was a book I meant to say, Aleister Crowley. The Great Beast, Aleister Crowley book. Aleister Crowley book Look, they know how to spell his name. Right? The Great Beast. Here it is on Amazon. The guy's name is John. Yeah, I remember. John Simons. Yeah. I had this book. I had a first edition of it. Okay. And I had that in the 1980s. Okay. So that's what I was reading in the 1980s. And I'm not a Crowleyite. I'm not sitting here like saying I'm a frater. Whatever. People are free to to be whatever religion they want to. And by the way, guys, huge news on the Scientology front. It looks as though, I hate to say it, I'm not trying to put anything down, but you have Leah Remini and you have all these documentaries about Scientology. And then now you have Danny Masterson, and it looks as though this whole Scientology thing might be crumbling. Now, we all know that they are like a CIA asset. And don't forget, the CIA kind of came out of the Jesuits. The Jesuits inside of the Catholic Church are an intelligence operation, right? And they actually, part of the ritual to be a Jesuit, you actually get absolved of your sins de facto, like ahead of time. And so you can rape and you can kill and you can murder under the guise of being a Jesuit. People don't understand this. Okay. That's why I'm saying we live in this superficial time where at least people have all these tattoos, but none of them are actually talking about the power that these tattoos imbue upon people. We're talking about that today. We're talking about symbolism. Now, every time you see a symbol, your mind is going to go to what somebody told you, like one of these Cheetos dusted idiots, right? That I watched for years and that are coming up through confirmation bias because I click the like button. I always help out my fellow channels. I comment underneath. Okay. And I try to get people to come to my show, and I really appreciate you guys here. This is not a one-trick pony. I talk about my life. I have my own songs. I have, right? And I'm not running around saying, oh man, all my punk rocker friends, because I like making friends who aren't punk rockers. Like, what do you have to be, like, part of a fucking tribe? I never understood that, because what happened with me is I became a songwriter. Okay. And part of the songwriting was, oh man, I hope I have I don't think I have, see, I always, sorry. Captain Fantastic and the Brown Deer Cowboy. Okay. This album, I was 9 years old, and I am so glad my sister bought this album. I was a 9-year-old kid. I wasn't buying albums, guys. Right? I have all sisters, and I was raised by my mother. I didn't know. I was a little kid. I knew that men were sexually attracted to my sisters, but I was a little kid, and I didn't know men were sexually attracted to me. And when I was in the 1980s punk rock scene in Detroit, I didn't know some sissy bitches, skinheads, were also apparently sexually attracted to me, because this came out much later. Oh yeah, I talk about that too. I talk about the Q-ops that they ran down on me in Florida. It was hell. It was hell, man. I didn't know what was happening. I was scared to death. And in case you don't know, I was hit by a car when I was 5, and I had like these built-in kind of, maybe I am Zoolander, just kind of like this. I had an existential crisis, and not many people can say that. I did. And I had one at 5. And so I saw the world completely different in a lot of ways, right? I'm not saying I'm like Mr. Special Guy, but okay. So take a look at this. Now, this had a libretto. And I just want to say big ups to Bernie Taupin, Axl Rose. I talk about Guns N' Roses and Nirvana, right? And because of the novel that I'm writing, that's going to be a television show called Linoleum Blown Apart. It's about a guy in a punk rock band like Duff McKagan, who all of a sudden finds himself in the biggest band in the world. But again, we're playing different types of music here, Okay. So it's not all rock and roll, but you can see the rock and roll, my earliest memory at 9 years old. 9. And I'm going to see Phantom of the Paradise at the movie theater that's right down at the end of my block. And my dad is gone. I don't know where he is. And I would cry for him. Like, where's my dad? Right. And it was a pretty horrific time for me. And I don't really care about any of my family or my friends anymore. I'm not going to emotionally invest. Just like Media Deep Blue. Now, picture yourself as a little child. Look into this stuff for yourself. Please be part of my show. Look at this Dali-esque cover. It's very beautiful. It was haunting. It was amazing. And I was 9 and I was reading all this stuff. And I tried to explain to you, you can't just throw a New Living Bible at a 10-year-old kid. Here you go. There's all your stories right there. That's your life. Now, I had already had an existential crisis, guys. So I'm thinking of death nonstop, right? I get afraid by loud noises. I shake. I would shake. Okay. But it was the walk it off 70s. Some neighborhood guy puts a dick in your face. Yeah, I'll just walk it off. No big deal. Right? So we could see that times have changed and things are different now. I'm not into disciplining children, but what happened was later on in life, right? Because I came up in the 1980s and I was beaten with a belt and stuff like that as a child, that I kind of adopted that into a psychosexual, fetish. And I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I'm not going to get beaten now, and I'm not going to participate in, what was that called? Autoerotic asphyxiation. I'm not into that. Right. I was married for 7 years. I'm a 57-year-old man. I'm at the twilight of my life, but you can see I'm in pretty good shape. The only thing I like to do is eat. Okay, so let's get into this a little bit. Okay, but I do want to talk about this Crowleyan notion. They say, oh, it's so dumb. First of all, with Crowley, it's do what thou wilt is the whole of the law. This comes from Rabelais. Okay, that's where he got it. It doesn't mean anything that has to do with Satan. These people are morons. Right? You have these dumb skinheads and white boys putting 666 everywhere. Well, I'm sorry, are you a skinhead who's like anti-Semitic because you're using a Christian trope? I mean, this is just insane. They don't know what they're doing, basically. How gematria works, and it's cool to see 3 numbers together. So regardless, it doesn't matter what numbers they are. 555. People see 1111 a lot, right? That's either 2 numbers or 4 numbers, right? It's kind of interesting, this play on numbers. But with isosophy and gematria, what you're looking for is a synonym within that number. And depending on what gematria you're using, the word Jesus Christ could add up to 666. Okay, so you have all this interplay between Lucifer and the transit of Venus is in a pentacle. Allegedly, that's how it goes across the stars. You would have to be learned in order to know this. Right? We talk about the word man actually means hands. We're all born equal, but under unequal circumstances. Some people are born they don't have any hands. Okay. But as having a conscience, having consciousness and decision making, right? This is the light. That's what it is. Okay. The darkness is here on the earth, right? And so you have to use your intelligence, knowledge, thought, deliberation, and resolution. So it's not only gnosis by seeking this knowledge out, which is what we're supposed to do. That's what your life is about, man. So if you want the easy answers right here, then there you go. Then you can settle for those easy answers. I'll never settle for easy answers because I'm on my life's mission, right? This is my book I showed you the other day. It's about the Gnostic religion. Hans Jonas. It's one I can't finish, right? And I've read other books in that time. And then here's what we're using today. And I want to show you. Don't worry, I'll get better at my show. Please, you got to share my show. You got to share it. Here I am. I've been listening to some of these other shows for like 10 years. And they can't even come to my show and say, hey, Gordon, congratulations on your show, right? I mean, like, what the fuck, hey, man? Why don't you go F yourself? We're looking up the will. So I'm not a Crowleyite. The devil and Satan. Satan means adversary, and we are adversarial to each other. And children. Go ahead and kill the children, right? That's what they're saying, right? That's what they do. They drop the bombs. They kill people. That's what happens. Oh, well, casualty of war, literally. Right? So we have this notion of the will, and we have the will, and we have our cognition, right? So we're saying that we have to deliberate something, and then we resolve it, right? We just said that, right? We have our intelligence. Oh, man, I was thinking about something here. It doesn't matter if you're a chef or you're an architect or whatever you are, a musician. You're like, you know what? I really like this riff. I'm going to put it with this riff. Yay. And when I do that, I'm going to resolve to say that I'm going to create another song or whatever. I'm going to go build a boat, right? So we have this cognition. We have our will. We're going to go out there with our hands. Hello. Remember Michigan? Son of a bitch. Right. There's in Michigan. Michigan is the mitt. And then they have the fist in downtown Detroit. I'm the fist, you son of a bitch. Wish I could do it like this. Yeah, it's like this. I'm like this. And by the way, I talk about the new Pee Wee Herman show and directors like Michel Gondry, like these set builders with movable sets that can work in conjunction with CGI. Michel Gondry just came up again. You can look him up. He's a really talented, interesting director. A lot of really talented, interesting people do come out of France. So a lot of French directors. I told you Wes Anderson, they're all wrapped up into some old French director and going through their archives. I also told you that my headshot is in the archive for Francis Ford Coppola. Okay, I got to meet him, got to shake his hand, got to work with his son on a Coca-Cola commercial. And I am the real thing, not Coke or Coca-Cola. Drugs don't define me. Pieces of trash like my ex-wife and former friends from Facebook who know that this is weaponized and we're laughing about it, laughing about Q-ops. Yeah, they don't define me either. But we're going to see about them because I have my own show and I could dox them. I'll show you pictures of them, right? Like Dave Krieger. I work with the guy. Man, he still has pictures of me, man. Right? Wow. It's amazing how these people just decided to turn on me in 2017 and 2018. And you think that I'm going to forget about it. Not on your life. So we can see here in this big thing, right? So, and only together does the will with the cognition, right? Our will, like once we understand like what's going to drive us, do they form the self-actualization of the spirit, right? So you have to understand what my belief is. Our soul is our personality, and our spirit is the breath that's breathed into us, and that will continue on after this meat bag dies. Okay? And so the spirit is what goes to, and they used to say that, oh, they're haunted by spirits, or when you're drinking alcohol, it's a what? It's a spirit, right? So, and, right? As there are likewise two processions in the Blessed Trinity, you see. So in order to be a Christian, right, you have to believe in that Holy Trinity. right? Which I do not. So I cannot be a Christian, and I'm not going to front. I'm sorry. I know that a bunch of phonies like to go to the Who's Gow and then they come out and, oh, I'm a Christian now. They don't even know what it is. Okay. It doesn't matter what religion you are. What matters is your gnosis, is your knowledge, is your interest. Where does your interest lie? Is your interest in having a row of toys behind you and going to buy toys? What are toys made out of? It's made out of plastic. It's made out of oil. Satan is of this earth. Okay, we're going to get into that. So we have the Holy Trinity. Cognition, the nous, our intelligence, our deliberation, our resolve, is not simply the light of love. And the will is not simply the impulse to knowledge, right? So our will is like, what's next? I'm willing this into existence. I got to figure this out, right? And will is not simply the impulse to knowledge, it is love. Our will is love. It says it right here. This is why Aleister Crowley said, love under will. My God. And everyone's like, oh my God, it's Satan. Satan. Oh my God. Satan. Sorry, I just like doing that. That's my favorite voice. Okay. So there it is right there. Our will is love, and that's why you have what's known as the cremation of care. Because you're destroying this first impulse. If you guys go back to my early episodes, I hope some of you do, please like and share my show. I comment on your show. Don't I? Yeah, I sure do. So, here we go. This thing's just not pulling up. It's just it's very difficult, pretty difficult doing this. Right? I don't know how I can pull this up. Right? I don't know how else I can pull this up. Maybe I can try on a different, kind of ruins my. So you can see the point that I'm making. Everything that Aleister Crowley was talking about is basically stolen. He stole it from other sources and he kind of created his own thing. And a lot of this stuff, these grimoires and stuff like that, in my opinion, these are like an old grimoire is like Stephen King. Okay. It's basically Stephen King. That's what these old grimoires are. Wow. The first thing that comes up is exposing Ashton Kutcher. We were talking about Scientology. Okay. And, I'm not going to, if you're a Crowleyite, if you're a Scientologist, that's okay. That's part of your belief system. I don't put it down. I struggle to understand it. And I think L. Ron Hubbard was using some Crowleyan notions to create his religion, and his religion is an intelligence operation, just like the Jesuits. Okay. And who do you have? You have Tom Cruise playing an intelligence officer. And who is he in real life? He would have to be the equivalent of a CIA agent in order to do these stunts that he does, he gets up every day and he works in the film industry. He loves it, right? Just like me, as that passion that I had. Just like the Safdie brothers. I love those guys. They remind me of me when I went to New York and I started doing all these independent films. It's not my fault that people didn't see them. It's not my fault that Don Buchwald agency were looking for long-haired guys with feathers in their fucking hair. That's not what a Native American really is. You had tons of guys look like me. Tons of mixed race people. Look at this revisionist history. Okay? So, again, I'm fully confident in my show. I'm fully confident in everything that I have to say. I'm fully confident in my coming novel that's going to be called Linoleum Blown Apart. That's all it's going to be called. People are going to look at it and be like, what? It's going to have all my songs. It's going to have these stories and these parallel lives going on. Right? So I was talking about my playlist. Let me whip it out. Ooh, boy. Here are my playlists. Right? I don't know why I got rid of it in the first place. Look at all this stuff on here, guys. I can go into detail about any of this stuff. Okay? Okay. But I have under a must watch, I believe, all the way down. Tons of stuff on here, guys. Tons of stuff on here. You could be involved in the comment section. You could be sharing my show. Please do. Please do. Come on, guys. Get off your tuchus. I talk about some of the most interesting stuff on this show. I'm not afraid to talk to anybody. I told you I was on the set with A-listers in the 90s. I never bragged about it. I never had anyone to tell my stories to. Why? Because I'm hanging out with a bunch of fucking trash. And, so this is a commercial. So I've got lunch with Devo, which is great. So we're talking about de-evolution. We're talking about the evolution of man, humans. We're talking about transhumanism. Okay. And this is what I'm talking about here. Look at this. Just one of the greatest openings of all time. Oops, low reflection. Here's the black goo. Look at those. Look at those. Drive the ship to new lane. Right. So we know that Valhalla it's just heaven. It's death. It's the death drive. There's the Phoenix. It's like water. It's like a snake. This is fantastic. And then you come with fire. You want satanic? This is Satan. Look at that. It's the oil, the black goo. We are your overlords. Okay, some people actually believe in this. They believe we have overlords, right? Because you have the blind idiot God. Okay, so you have the God who just made this earth and just, you can't commune with them. Right? You can't commune with God. So you have to commune with an archangel instead. And these angels can be demons. Through etymology, you could see that it's almost nearly the identical word. The word means the same thing. An angel is a demon. So what that's proving is that these are trickster beings. So if you put your faith into it, it doesn't really matter because they could be just fucking with you. Or you could tap into something bigger. Now, oh, by the way, so I did a pitch called Single Dad Jokes. And they already made it. It's called Louder Milk. Okay. Please check out Louder Milk. It was a television show by one of the Farrelly brothers. Okay. And in Louder Milk, it's a guy from Office Space too. I'm a big Office Space fan. I love it. There's a lot of shows I really, really love. I don't have time to watch them all, but the Single Dad Joke pitch was already made. It's called Louder Milk, but they went 3 seasons on that. And it had a great cast. But I think it just kind of failed in these narratives. It was just, and again, I can't put the show down. And I'm critical of stuff that I actually like. And this is what people don't understand. I really love it. I love the idea behind Louder Milk. But I think, like I said, with these shows, you build on that. And where Louder Milk really didn't hit on all cylinders, we might be able to do something like Single Dad Jokes. And because there are all these single dads out there, and you have this whole push for LGBT, right? And you have the notion of men still being sexual, right? A lot of men are still sexual and they want to have sex. And for some reason, women, they reach a certain age, they don't really participate in the sex anymore. And I think that kind of created, right, this, not created, but, a lot of men go outside of their normal sexuality, is what I'm saying. That's why I don't understand why you all of a sudden you have to pick what your sexuality is. Excuse me. Speaking of fluid, you saw the beginning, right? I guess that's what they call gender fluid or something like that, right? Um, where for the most part we do have our proclivity, but whatever. Like I said, for as far as I'm concerned, what I did for Two-Legged Animal, in case you guys don't know, I actually lived out on the streets and I proved that police officers work through setups. That's what they do. It's pretty horrific stuff. They use sexual predators out on the streets. Police officers, municipal workers, government officials, people that you're supposed to be kind of having a little bit of faith in, they run these ops on people. And if you put out a $100 bill and you put shit on that $100 bill, and then they videotape you picking up the $100 bill, scraping the shit off, and then going and using the $100 bill. Now you're a bad person. You're just a piece of shit. You're a piece of shit like that $100 bill with the shit on it. This is what municipal workers and police officers have done in the past. I don't know what they're up to now, right? So if we can steal up to $1,000 and not get busted, not get prosecuted, is it ethical to steal now? Did the ethics of property and what stolen property is, did that change? Did the ethics of stolen property just change? Now I can just go in and just take whatever I want, right? Sorry. Just let that sink in, please. Let it sink in. Is that what we're going to teach the children? Look, they already had these Amazon shops. I told you that I was fired from Amazon because I was going to fight a kid. He was fighting a lot of people, getting a lot of fist fights. That's all right. I'm a guy, and I'm not going to apologize for that. Okay? I'm not going to apologize. Guys get in fights. That's what we do, And so, by the way, right out here, I was watching a female to male trans. They got into a pretty big row. Back in my day, a bouncer was just a human wall, some big guy that you would give him $100 for the night to kind of watch the door. You'd have to throw out a couple of drunks. Yeah, it's not bad. All right. It's easy for them to do. They're big guys. You know who bouncers are now? They're paramilitary officers. And they work for private security companies. And they don't fuck around. They're not there to fuck around. Okay. So I watched this female to male trans person get out of control. And you know what? I realized that it's because they're taking what? Testosterone. I knew a female to male trans person. Like I said, I don't have any problem with people for what they want to do. Okay. We are in the crowning of the child. You have one part of the divide going to see this Jim Caviezel movie, thinking that there's children hidden in a shipping container somewhere. You have human trafficking that involves children, right? But you can clearly see that me, as an old punk rocker listening to Discharge, this is before Metallica, guys. You got to come back in time with me. I'm from 1980s, 70s, and 80s Detroit. I'm from 1990s New York. I went out to Las Vegas, and I was being set up just like, man, I can't remember the guy's real name. Just like Ace from Casino. When I was when I moved to Las Vegas in 1999, there was still the Silver Slipper was still there. It was a dump, and I learned how to play craps for a quarter, and that's how I learned. Instead of a $5 chip or a $25 chip, I was playing for a quarter. You could play quarter craps. And that's how I learned how to play craps. But just like a lot of things like Durok, this Russian card game, just like Tunk, that was the African American card game. All these games, Hair Today, Goon Tomorrow, right? I can't remember any of them, right? You got to be in it to win it, right? So when I was 9 years old, right? Okay. So you can clearly see that. Again, please check out my playlists. They're way more interesting. I got a lot of stuff on my show. You can take me to task about anything. So I'm 9 years old. Oh, I got rid of the picture already. So take a look at the picture for Captain Fantastic and the Brown Deer Cowboy. It looks like a comic book. That's why I never got into comic books, because look what I was looking at when I was 9. And I got into comics until I was about 12. And then I realized that I should be reading a paperback. And I started reading books, right? Like Encyclopedia Brown and like all this kind of stuff, right? So he has a song on here called The Tower of Babel. Now, Babel is in Iraq, and that region is actually Persia. It's actually Iran, and that is where Zoroastrianism came from. Okay, Zoroastrianism is one of these dualistic religions, and don't forget, Christianity is monotheism. Okay, and so when you have Nietzsche saying God is dead, that God of the Bible, the monotheistic God, he wrote "Thus Spake Zarathustra" to bring us back to this kind of dualism, right? It's almost like whatever it is, right? People go into it's like evil and good, and evil and good. It's like, how about the gray zone? Where's the gray zone? Where's this middle pillar, right? Right? I told you, you have the two pillars. You have Joaquin and Boaz. You have Joaquin Phoenix and Boaz is afraid. They're telling you about this ancient tradition right in the film. And what is it about? It's about the mother, a domineering mother. I had a very domineering mother. Right? So you have the lyrics to Tower of Babel, and I'm listening to this album. It's party time for the cousin Tower of Babel. Sodom meet Gomorrah, Cain meet Abel. Like, what? I'm like, well, this goes with my Bible. And this is what I'm thinking as a child, even though I knew it was like kind of like, ooh, this is naughty. And again, you're talking about Elton John, but you're talking about Bernie Taupin, and it was Axl Rose who made sure that Bernie Taupin got inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, I think, or whatever he got, a Grammy or something, some accolade, some smoke blown up his ass. Well, rightfully so. We wouldn't even have Elton John. And by the way, there is 2 John Lennon songs that were added to Captain Fantastic and the Brown Deer Cowboy. Okay, these guys were all doing coke. So what I'm trying to tell you, we've already established here that John Lennon was more than likely, because of the lyrics to the Ballad of John and Yoko, sowing 50 acorns in a sack, I meant. Well, what do you do when you bring over drugs? You rip out the lining of your suitcase and you sew all the drugs on the inside. Everybody knew that. There was no TSA, guys. Okay? And then he would show up with Yoko Ono, and they could do this little witchy kind of, hey, everybody, hey, how are you? Oh, hey, how's it going there? Oh, boy, John Lennon signed some autographs. And then you walk right through. And you've got all these drugs. Now, if it's opium, right? If it's opium, you bring back the opium and you can really stretch it out. You could smoke it. You could turn it into heroin. They could process it, stretch it out a hell of a lot more, right? And Coke, I don't know, were those Schedule I drugs yet? Or I guess they were, because we were talking about the 70s. Okay. Right. And here he is hanging out with Elton John. I believe Elton John had his bout with drugs, right? I had my bouts with drugs. So, and Tony King, who was homosexual, I'm not putting it down. And then you also have Brian Epstein, who was homosexual. And John Lennon went on a famous trip with Brian Epstein. Big deal. And guess what? What if they did have sex? Like, okay. So it's party time for the guys in the Tower of Babel. Ooh, Sodom and Gomorrah. I didn't even know what that meant. I didn't know what Sodom and Gomorrah meant. I didn't know it was Sodom is for sodomy. That means they're having sex for pleasure and not for procreation. Okay. Well, look at tantric sex, right? You don't have to be male or female. I mean, you could be any sex to experience this tantric sex with another person. And that's part of this holy union that you're supposed to experience, because what is an orgasm, right? That's our, right? It's your libido, your sex drive, and you're looking to prolong it. So you start getting into tantric sex. Okay. So you can prolong this sex drive, right? So again, you get into a lot of cults and a lot of orgiastic notions with these cults, right? Having sex with each other. Ooh boy, ooh boy. So this kind of flows right directly in. You could see this free association that we do on the show, right? Satan is of this earth. That's what it's all about. When you start caring a little bit too much about what's coming out of the ground, some crude oil, than you do the actual people who live there. And we know from an economic hitman that's what they do. They go in and they just kind of take over these societies, right? They get all their resources, right? Don't forget, war is a racket. There's a book, it's called by Smedley Butler, and they wanted Smedley Butler to be the president of the United States. And he realized it's like, yeah, our military aren't going there because we're worried about being invaded. Our military is going there to protect Dole fruit. We're using our military down there for something else. And when I was coming up, it was Iran-Contra in the Sandinistas. And the people telling us about that were the Clash. Okay? Do you see how complex this all is now? Do you see the interweaving of these stories? I'm not here to bust guys who sit around covered in Cheetos dust, looking at hentai porn, which is cartoons. Okay? I'm not about cartoons, and I'm not about comic books on this show. We're here to talk about adult themes. You guys are actually helping me to write Linoleum Blown Apart. I write 3,000 words a day. I also train myself to be not only an actor, but a songwriter. Okay. And so you need this human element. You need, like I said, I don't give a shit about Chat GPT. I don't care if AI takes over anything. Like I said, I was making jokes about, oh, and by the way, he talks about a scarecrow. Elton John talks about the scarecrow. And here I did, all these years later, come back and I started working on a song called The Scarecrows of LA that goes into the property called LA 2039. And all these properties I'm going to be writing up and putting them on Kindle. I told you, 3,000 words per day. All I have to do is sit down and do it. Right now, I have to do other things outside of here. I am homeless. I eat off the EBT menu. It's $6 per day, guys. I have to eat found food. I have to go to the senior center to get a meal, right? And there's a lot of urchins out here, and they actually do very, very well. They beg for food. People give it to them. If I'm really hungry, you know what I really want? Man, I want a fucking burger so bad. Like, oh. If I'm really hungry, if you check my other channel, I don't post there anymore. It's called Fallen Angelinos. And if you check there, I think there's still a video up where I just went to McDonald's and just put up I wrote a sign that says food, FOOD. Okay. And what I found, if you're homeless, okay, and if you put up a sign that just says food, people will give you money. Now they'll give you food, but they'll give you money. And this is what these urchins don't understand, because they're going to use the money for drugs and alcohol. And it puts you in this haze, this foggy kind of, you're living in this, you're not living up to your potential. You have a low self-esteem, even though if you brought that up, they would deny it. My father had a low self-esteem. He had to leave so my mother could get on food stamps. He's not allowed inside the house. He had to legally leave. Right? But if you have a sign that says food, I had to do that a couple of days, guys. It was tough. I've been making videos since I got here, and I'm never going to stop. So please share the video. But if you have a sign that says food, they'll give you money. And you'll get food. Just put the food to the side and go back with your sign that says food. I'll be like, this guys want food. Or just say hungry. Hungry. I'm hungry, man. I'm hungry. And people will be like, you hungry, man? Nah, no worries. Right? Now, is that communism? I know for a fact that this is why I don't hang out with these street urchins, because what's yours is theirs. That's how it works. Oops, I'm getting a little loud, sorry. What's yours is theirs. And so I don't smoke cigarettes, and I don't really smoke weed. Like I said, that one guy gave me some weed. Like, I like having a little bit of alcohol, drinking, having a nice drink, right? That's what I like doing. So just to wrap it up, guys, thank you very, very, very much. I come at you every single day with new information. We are in the era of the crowning of the child, and we all care about children, so don't tell me you don't. We're not naive here. We can clearly see that I cut my hair, and right? We can clearly see that there's this unnatural obsession with children now. What are we teaching the children? What are we doing with the children? Is this children getting hurt? Then, through Media Deep Blue, our politicians are hurting children. Whoa, 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 whoa. Wow, wow, woo-wee. Where are we going with this, man? No. This is truly insane. Nobody else is examining this. You better take a step back, Jack. You better start using your rationality. And this is what I'm trying to tell you. Once you start getting into this stuff, it's not just delivering you news and information. The AI is a physical addiction. It's a satiation. Take a look at Mark Zuckerberg's Meta business plan of March 2023. He says he wants you falling in love with your device. I told you, you can go on here and there's a billion websites, but what do? You come on here and you only go to 3. I literally only go to 1. I'm not kidding. I don't do any business on any other sites except for YouTube. Okay? That's all I do. StreamYard, YouTube, whatever. Okay? That's it. I don't go to any other sites. And how insane is that? Now, I had a very successful business at my parents' house. I'm very sorry that my parents aren't interested in anything that I have to do, say, think, or feel. They're not. My dad is. He's cool. He's my stepdad. My mother, my sisters, then my wife. I can understand if you don't love somebody, but you have every obligation to let them know. My wife's involved in this running game, cash for smells. So just to kind of let you guys know, I spent time out on the streets and I got in my million words as a writer. Now I'm not writing research papers. Do you understand? This is creative writing. And for me, it took me a long, long time. Just like Anthony Bourdain. He wrote a piece when he was 44. And they're like, can you do an entire book? He's like, yeah, I can do a book. And then take a look at Bone in the Throat. They turned it into a Snatch style English film. One of his books. Right? It's just like Bradley Cooper. He made a film about a drug-addled chef. Right? Very Bourdain-like. Very Bourdain-like. Right? And I know for a fact that Bourdain, Chester Bennington, Chris Cornell, David Strouder from Majesty Crush, Kate Spade, all committed suicide by hanging. And for me, when these emotions were coming through here, emotions messing up my head, I didn't have a friend in the world. They all turned their back on me. I started writing in a poetic language. And I believe the people who, quote unquote, came to my rescue, if that's what they were doing, I believe they were in on it. And again, it's all PD. It's plausible deniability. I told you. There's somebody from the St. Clair Shores Police Department at my mother's home, my mother and father. And they were going to kill me if I would have got out of line. That's why that guy was there. And they were still utilizing this. If you want to get involved in my show, you can get involved in my show. Please share it. It's the most interesting show that's available right now. These people are saying the same thing that they were saying in 2017. Guys, they're reliving this. They're in this time loop. Okay. I was watching this kid show yesterday. It's unwatchable. All he does is sit there and smoke weed and talk about this ridiculous bullshit. What we're actually doing here is I'm actually writing a novel. I have songs. I have stories. This is tangible stuff. You know what these online personalities have? They don't have a fucking thing. Most of them. What's happening now is what they've been doing for a long time. Even Henry Kissinger talked about controlling somebody's food. And what are they doing right now? They're not only controlling our food, they meaning those involved in this, and Henry Kissinger's protege, but they're creating a false scarcity. That's really scary. How is it that all of a sudden you can't make the connection between the government telling private farmers to stop farming, Smedley Butler telling you that our government works for the United Fruit Company, and our discernment, we're using it. We're not looking for easy answers, sleazy, greasy, or easy, like my eggs in the eggy verse. Right? We're not looking for these easy answers. We have to look outside this orthogonal view. Okay? We have to look outside of this thing and say, hey, oh, wait a minute, boy, I tell you, something isn't right. Something isn't right. Synthetic meat, cow farts, like, right? We watch this stuff. We watch Media Deep Blue tell us this stuff. But when do we actually get together and talk about it? You guys aren't even commenting on my show. I don't even know where my show is going. I'm trying to promote my show, guys. I can't do that without you. I'll be doing this show until the day that I die. I don't care. I was born in the BC era before computers. I'm not here to be an influencer, right? I have the most interesting stories. And I'll go on anybody's show. I'll talk about this with anybody. So, but that's really truly up to you. I don't think sitting at home and name calling people pedos is rescuing children. I just don't think that or believe that. I don't think putting information out there that politicians are involved in hurting children is anything other than nefarious. Because if somebody's really involved in hurting somebody else, which they really are because they drop bombs and children are going to get hurt, but you don't talk about that, right? You don't care about that, right? That's why I'm not up against the corporate machine and I'm not up against the government, because I understand that you're not going to beat City Hall, and it's not us against the government. We are the government. We get a government number as soon as we're born. We start paying payroll taxes. That's what I'm tapped into right now. Almost tapped out. I got to tap out. Right? You're not going to dismiss this corporatocracy. We're in it. What are we going to do about it? For me, I'm in West Hollywood. I pitch my ideas all the time. I never run out of ideas. I worked as an actor, guys. I was working with A-listers. It's not my fault that I don't have a group of people behind me going, a cheering section. Go, Gordy, go. Oh my God, you're so amazing. They can't wrap their minds around the fact that I'm part Southern African. That's their problem, not mine. It's not about these 4 root races. It's about your culture. And I want to create our own culture right here on my show of like-minded people who can see beyond the left-right divide, who understand that doing something creative instead of something destructive is more interesting, right? That's biblical. Everybody's welcome here. Nobody's putting down these thoughts, but we're looking beyond this satanic notion that there's Satan and that you can commune with these spirits. And we're looking at it in a different way. Like I said, like it might be at a place that's haunted, right? Where a lot of deaths occur. And we're so far out that I could take a look at something so, I'm sorry, it was just so mediocre. This whole 7 years in Tibet, where you got a fascist going over there. Well, what do you think they're going to do? They're getting ready to mow down a bunch of people. That's pretty scary. They're going to have a genocide. Well, what kind of power can they access through the Bardo? That's why that guy was there. And maybe on the next show, we can look into this guy and we can learn a little bit more about why that guy was there. Now, don't forget, in my property, I'm going to do another show about my novel, Linoleum Blown Apart. Don't forget that the punk rock kid gets his inspiration from a film, one of Walter's films called Bonaparte Bon Ami, My Friend Napoleon. And it's a comedy. It's a gross out comedy where you got a cannonball hitting somebody and their head completely exploding and blood going everywhere. Well, Walter has never made a film like this before. Think about the pie fight in Dr. Strangelove. Do you guys remember this? You have to look into the archive of Dr. Strangelove, and there was this big pie fight that they filmed, but they didn't use it. It just didn't fit, right? It was supposed to be like slapstick. But instead of slapstick, we actually have Media Deep Blue telling us that billionaires died at the same place as the Titanic, and then we get a bunch of comedians making jokes about it, right? You have these deaths and these celebrity court cases, and you have just jokes about it, right? Every once in a while, I mean, we're in an existential crisis. You know, you got to make the best of it. But maybe dipping into these legal, moral, and ethical conundrums is something more that we could talk about on this show. Okay. Take care.